Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of the Happy Head Podcast. I'm your host, Paul, and I've got the amazing Leigh Howes. Good afternoon, Leigh. How are you doing?
I'm great, thank you, Paul. How are you? Great to be here.
I'm splendiferous. Now, I've got a really good introduction to this because sort of like serendipity. First of all, look, Leigh was 6.5 minutes late for this recording, which is like, I'm a punctual person and I really, really hate. So I was thinking of a suitable punishment. And then it sprung to mind that on my Instagram feed, Mr. David Goggins, the former American Special Forces guy, had a picture of his hand. And all of this bit here was missing skin because he'd just apparently done some kind of mega pull-up thing. And he said, even with this skin missing, I'm still able to do another 1,000 pull-ups. So my punishment for Leigh, as you're going to do this live on the show, is 5 million pull-ups on one arm, starting now.
Brilliant. That's brilliant because I can't even do one.
Well, that's no good. You got 4,999,999 to go.
9. I know.
9. That's not.
Is that good enough? I don't even know what pull-up is. They're like those things, aren't they? Where you have to do it on the.
Yeah, it's a bar,
and you pull your chin up to the top. It's that way.
Yeah, we can do either way.
Do you know what? I could probably. I reckon I could do a few of those. I couldn't do a press up. I'm thinking press up, but a pull up is totally different. I think I could do a pull up because there's not a huge amount of me. So I'm sure I could do 1 or 2. I definitely could do that.
Good. Yeah, more than I can do, that's for sure.
Wow, there you are. You're saying it's more than I could do with a press up because I definitely can't do a press up. Not great. I can do the press up.
It's the same weight of you, though, isn't it?
It is, but it must be. Do you know what I think it is? I rode horses for many, many years, and I'm a lot stronger than I look. But I'm stronger, like from my rowing. So that's the same sort of thing, rather than taking your weight in a different way. That's what I was.
Yeah, because I'm guessing with horses, kind of strong thighs and strong forearms.
Yeah,
controlling the horse.
Yeah, you're not. If you think of a press up, it's a completely different concept, isn't it? To pulling your arms up. So I think I'm sure someone who understands about what on earth we're talking about right now will know that that's a different muscle that you're using.
Yeah, don't explain.
Let's not even go there. Let's not even go there. So, I reckon I could do 2 more of those than I can a press up. That's
fair enough. We've got that.
You'll have to challenge me. I'll have to test myself.
Yeah. Well, you are, but you have been suitably challenged already. So, do you still ride?
I stopped about 5 years ago after 33 years. Yeah, big deal. That was a big deal in my life, stopping. And still one of those that I'm starting to think I really need to get back in the saddle. Horses have been literally my life up until about 5 years ago. It's a huge big deal for me stopping.
Was there any particular reason why you stopped? I know horse riding is very expensive.
Yeah, no, it was time mainly, if I'm honest. It's a huge part of my journey because I think where I'm at now and the lessons I've learned along the way about what's most important to me, for me at that time in my life, I felt like I was running around the hamster wheel a lot. And to cut a very long story short, the horse that I had at the time was owned by a very, very good friend of mine. I'd had her for about 9 years. I had her in full loan. She moved away and gave me the option to keep her, but it just meant that I would have had to give more time than I was already given, and it wasn't fair on either of us to do it. So it was a big decision that I had to make. I had the kids and business, and so I stepped away.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, I love horses. I spent a lot of time working in France. I had a French girlfriend for a while, and her family ran a pony club, and I'd get a free ride whenever I want. And the best thing we used to do was that not every day, but some days we'd grab the whole herd and we'd ride them down to the beach because the beach was only like sort of 20 minutes walk away. So we'd walk, and they absolutely loved it because we'd get them down to the beach, and the beach at that time of day, 5, 6 o'clock, would be pretty much empty. It was one of these massive beaches where the tide goes out a long way. And so you could let them go full throttle and they'd just head out into the water, and they were like kids. They were splashing around and making all kinds of noises, and absolutely fabulous. I really, really do love that.
Horses
came back to the UK, and it's just so expensive learning to ride, and all the gear and booking lessons is just so.
I think it's sorry to butt in. I think it's so much harder as well now because when I worked with horses, and as a kid, I was teaching horse riding at a really, really young age, and I just don't think the legislation then was as it is now. So you see loads of riding schools have closed down for the reason of insurance, and for a number of
Insurance?
reasons, I'm sure.
What's that?
Yeah,
When I used to ride in a pair of shorts, flip-flop,
exactly,
t-shirt,
exactly.
no hard hat, no back protection.
Hmm.
Thankfully, the area that my girlfriend used to live was lots of sandy, woody areas, soft landing spots. I used to get
I was
thrown
gonna,
because the
I spent
horses, because it was a pony club, the horses had a set route. So when the paying clients were on the horse, it was like kind of down this way, turn right, turn left, a little bit of a gallop here, turn right, head back to home. And I remember I took one horse out, Mercure was his name, and he was a sod. And there was this like long run, and we were going there, we were really, really going. And I forgot completely that there was a right turn halfway down this field, which was kind of like the way back. So I'm going, I'm doing my cowboy impression. We're really going for it. He thinks, sod you, Wilson. I'm going home now. And literally, like a cartoon, he kind of stops on his back legs, turns right. I
around.
keep going, and he buggers off into the
Yeah.
woods.
The school, I think,
I'm doing my Superman impression. Leap tall building a single bound,
I swear to
Thankfully,
you.
it's soft, and I land, and I'm thinking, effing horse, yeah, because now I've got to go and find the bugger, yeah.
Yeah.
So I get up, I'm all dazed, and I go into the woods, and literally 50 yards into the woods, he's standing there munching on some grass. He looks at me and goes, "What's your problem?"
I think that's the thing with horses, and this riding school horses, like you say, they're programmed like that, because I used to take hacks out, and there would be 8 or 9 rides. I mean, I don't know if they still do that now, 8 or 9 kids, and you put someone as a rear escort, someone at the front, and you literally, because the horses know exactly, they go down the hill, they know they're going to canter up the other side, and you have to get to the top and make sure that you've got all the kids that you started like at the other side of the hill are all with you and safe. Oh yeah, the number of times I've picked people up, the number of times I've come off. But they do say, this is what I drummed into myself when I was a kid, you have to fall off 7 times before you're a good rider. That's what I
Oh
remember.
God, I must
Always
be a
thankful.
genius
I
riding.
know, no, me too. But I was like, when I'd fallen off 6 times, I was thinking, it's okay, I've got another one to go, and then I'm a good rider. So, yeah, we're all geniuses, right? Because we've all taken a topple off.
Oh yeah, I used to love riding bareback as well, because
Yeah, me too.
that's just unbelievable. No shoes on, pair of shorts, and you kind of like you become part of the horse then, and also no bridle, no gear, just holding on to the mane, bit like sort of like Native Americans you see in the old movies, yeah. Unbelievable, absolutely phenomenal. But like you say, nowadays it's a completely different ball game, and having to ride around one of those rings and things would do my head in.
Yeah, I think it's the freedom. I was always the same. I think the sanity that I got from just, I do think, I always say to myself, what came first? You say it's the chicken or the egg. Was it the horses or my love of nature? I still to this day don't really know. Had I not have had horses, would I love being outside as much as I do? Or do I love horses because I actually had it in me that I needed to be outside? And I agree with you. I mean, I used to do a lot of show jumping. I would do a lot of, so I'd do a lot of, obviously, schooling. So I'd been in the indoor school, but my favorite place to be would be off exploring in the woods. And I love doing that now on foot. So, yeah, I mean, horses are just, I think they're magical. I just think they're just incredible. They literally kept me sane as I was going through my career, for sure. 100%.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
They are unique in the sense of, I mean, they're not exactly a pet, and they're not kind of livestock as such. They're somewhere in between, but they're just phenomenal. They really,
Mm.
really are. Yeah, and I
Mm.
love being around. Even today, if I go for a walk in the countryside and I see a horse in a field, I'll go up and I'll try and make some stupid noises, try and get it to come
Yeah,
over. So I can just
me
say
too.
hello.
Every single time. It's yeah, it just makes my heart sing. It's just I absolutely love it. And I think being around them as well. I think for me, and whenever there's been a difficult stage in my life growing up where the horses, just being in the stable with my horse was just a game changer in terms of how I could feel. Like sometimes you just don't want to converse with humans, you just want to hang around, and these animals just know, they pick up on it. They're just incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, most animals can pick up really easy on human behavior, on human feelings and emotions.
Mm.
And I think I've talked about this the other week with somebody about kind of the if you're in a room, if you're in a party and you're at the far end of the room and you're talking to somebody and you think somebody's looking at me, I can feel it, and you know the hairs on the back of your neck kind of thing, and you look around and yeah, right across the room there's somebody looking at you. I don't know how that works, but the same thing happens with animals. Yeah, they can sense how we're feeling, and I've got
Yeah.
no idea scientifically how it, you know, the vibes, the energy, whatever it is, but it does work. It
Yeah, it
really
does. You're
does.
right. Yeah,
It's
'cause
unbelievable.
it is. And I also think they pick up as well whether you are an animal person, right? I always said that. If I have a dog now, I had a cat, the horses, you're right. It must be, and I've never looked into this, but it must be like, it's almost like a scent that you must give off, or like you say, your energy, because they definitely pick up on it and respond accordingly, which
Yeah,
is,
absolutely. But anyway, this is not a horse riding show, as I didn't think it was. So,
I'm really happy to talk about. We could talk about horses the whole way through this. I'm super happy to do that.
oh, fine, let's talk about horses then. So, yeah, I mean, it's not just legislation though; it's got more expensive because even back in what we're talking the 80s, it was you know like the equivalent of £5 for an hour on the
Mm,
back of a pony. God knows
yeah.
what the price is now.
I wouldn't have a clue. I really wouldn't have a clue. I mean, I know when I was having private lessons, going back, not well, that would have been 5, 6 years ago. Yeah, you're looking at least 20 quid for half an hour then. So I have no idea what it is now. And it's interesting because my parents have moved to Norfolk and they've got like farm fields all around them. And the farmer was baling up the hay when I was there a few weeks ago. And my dad was asking me the question, like, how much would a bale of hay now cost? And I said, honestly, I have no idea. Because we, at the time, I'm going back when I was a kid, you'd only ever buy the bales of straw in the square bales. And obviously now they're in the big round bales that you get. And you think about what you paid for even that now. So it all has a knock on effect, doesn't
Yeah,
it? And with everything that's gone on, in fact, I was talking to a guy, I'm totally digressing, I'm going from horses here to now talking about fences in the garden, how figure that out. But we were talking about getting a new fence in our garden, and he was telling me the lack of materials that are available. So you can't get hold of like fence panels, wood is really difficult to get hold of. So, you know, I guess everything's having a knock-on effect, right? With everything that we're surrounded by and have been for the last goodness knows how long with the
yeah,
pandemic.
wood and fencing panels. That's because of furlough last year.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
every person and their dog thought, "Oh, I've been going to be told I'm working from home. I need to replace my fence panel. Here's a great time to do it." And also, we had some
mm,
fabulous weather last year, so I
yeah,
think, and bizarrely, gardening centres were deemed to be a place that could be opened. So people zoomed into gardening centres and redid their gardens and did their fencing and all kinds of things. But yeah, I can remember going, "Oh God." It's just brought back a memory. The local farmer brought a tractor load of hay bales that had to be stacked, and I'd never done it before, so I was wearing like a t-shirt. And at the end, when
I
we'd
can
finished,
imagine.
it looked like I'd been slashed by a dozen razor blades. My arms were kind of like out here, swollen, and they were just like zigzags of red marks all the way up and down.
Mm, yeah, yeah,
Unbelievable. It was backbreaking work as well. It took us a good couple of hours to
hard.
tip it off and stack it.
Yeah, yeah, good physical exercise. Actually, I always used to say that that's the thing with working at the stables. It's a different kind of energy you're using up, isn't it? Physical versus that mental like work that you might do now. I actually love it. There's something really nice about a good bit of physical exercise, I think. And I think you definitely got that with stables, whether you were stacking the barrels or mucking out or whatever you were doing.
Yeah, mucking out was interesting because the first time I was shown how to do that, I was just shoveling everything into the wheelbarrow, and then the owner, my kind of mother-in-law ish figure, she gave me a real kicking because she goes, you know, this is in French. And look, that costs money. So what you're going to do is separate the poo from the hay, and you do it like this. And she took about 5 seconds to show me. So I'll be back in an hour. Do it properly. I learnt my lesson really quickly.
Yeah, there's definitely a technique to it. Who knew though that if you've not done it before, and I would always say the same thing. If you watch people, I've got a bit of an obsession about sweeping up because I used to well, we had a big yard that needed sweeping. So there is a technique to sweeping. So we've got quite a long drive. And then I see my husband out there sweeping. And I'm like, you're not sweeping properly. That's not how you're meant to sweep. There's like a technique. And he'd be like, what on earth are you talking about? I'm telling you, there's a technique, just like there is mucking out. So it's funny. It's bringing it all back to me now.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's bizarre the things you learn that you wouldn't have expected to learn when you're around horses.
Definitely. Definitely.
Anyway, let's get away from GG's. What brings you to the show, Leigh? Why are we talking? I mean, obviously we're talking because we like horses and stuff, but why are we here? Talk to me.
You tell me. I think, Paul, for me, the reason I was drawn to you is
Is that
I like
magnificent? I know,
you are
yeah.
magnificent. Well, it's
Okay.
all about energy. So you come back to energy. Well, it is, isn't it? I know we laugh about it, but there is like, and you're drawn to people that are like-minded. You're drawn to people who you like their energy about them. You're drawn to them because you like what they talk about and what they appear to stand for. And I would say that was definitely what happened in terms of seeing you in my wider network. And I love what your podcast is called, by the way, because I think I'm all about ensuring we do more of what makes us happy. And I think that we need to be thinking more about that in business, for sure. So I think there was a draw there, and then we had some conversations, didn't we? And lo and behold, here we are today.
Yeah, I find it really bizarre, and I'm guilty of this as much as anybody else is, that we spend so much time doing stuff we don't really want to do because we kind of get locked into a box that says you've got to make money to pay your bills, and you spend more and you get bigger bills, and it just becomes like a never-ending kind of spiral. I ended up with 50 grand's worth of debt at one stage, which took me like 6.5 years to spend off simply. And it wasn't like fast girls and great cars. It was just normal everyday living. And but the kids wanted this and the kids wanted that, and my ex-wife said we got to go on holiday. And one day I just walked into the shops to buy some food for breakfast, something, and my card was declined. And that's how I found out I was 50K in debt. It's unbelievable. So yeah, I am all about now trying to convince people that, well, no, I don't even try. I just tell people my thing. And if you want to hear it, they want to hear it. But to look for things to do that you enjoy, even if you're in a job that you can't leave for financial reasons, you hate it, find something outside of that you can look forward to, because a lot of people don't even have stuff to look forward to, and I think that's the saddest thing of anything.
I agree with you. And I think it's so weird, isn't it, that for me, I have this saying where I say, don't wait to fix your roof when it's like, don't wait until it's raining to fix the roof. And for me, I'm not saying I've had a lovely life and a very happy time, but I think certainly when I set my business up, for a period of time, I was one of those on that hamster wheel. And I know that even though I was like smiling to the outside world, I was in a state where I was in that feast or famine. And I've had the card decline situation happen to me, and it's horrible. It really is horrible. And then for me, when I went through a journey with cancer in 2017, it was just the biggest wake-up call around happiness, because it just allowed me to sit back and say, I think it's, you can't even begin to imagine the perspective that this, like any trauma, anyone that's been through any trauma, right? I mean, I don't know the situation for you and for anyone that's listening, but it just makes you think about what's most important. And for me, it just prompted me to almost sit I didn't do it any formally, but I do now with my clients, is to sit down and think, what is most important to me and what makes me happy? And it's really interesting, because I was only saying to, I think it was my husband actually a few days ago, that on the whole, I don't do things I don't want to do anymore. Whereas I know that in the past, and even though I've always been quite strong, I'm not one of those people that shies away from saying no. There were definitely things that I was doing and being involved in that really, if I put my hand on my heart, I didn't enjoy it and didn't really want to do it. Whereas now, I'll just be honest, if it's not for me, I don't want to do it. So I do try to live as happy a life as I possibly can now.
This is kind of becoming a recurring theme, Leigh, because I've talked to several people over the past few months where we've kind of said they've gone through a thing, and it's taken the thing for them to realize, what, pre-thing, I wasn't happy, or I wasn't happy as I want to be. Howes thing, I'm saying screw everything that I don't enjoy doing. I'm going to spend most of my time doing what I enjoy.
Yeah.
And don't you feel it's like a real shame that we need a traumatic event or a thing to have to struggle through and to make us realize that, hang on a minute, we're only here once. I may
Yeah.
as well do what I can to enjoy myself whilst I'm here. I wonder why we don't figure this out earlier on, why we need to have the thing to go through first.
Yeah, I agree with you. Do you know what I think it is? And I think just two things here. I think that even though you've been through a thing like that, when you're in the whole moment of it, I think it forces your hands like to do things differently. So for I use an example of, I was really conscious of my health and my well-being in that moment and for quite some time afterwards, and I still am today. But I still am today, but not in the same way that I was then. So even though I've been through that, it's still very easy to fall back into some old ways. So I use the example of juicing. I was juicing like twice a day because I knew that it was great for me as I was going through what I was going through. But it's almost like now that that risk has been removed, well, it hasn't, the risk hasn't been removed, but it was like a life or death situation that I was in. That has been taken away now mostly. So therefore the threat's not there. So things calm down, and before you know it, you almost go back to a default setting. So there's two things for me. One is the consciousness of that, is knowing that that is happening, and then being conscious enough to rein yourself back in to, so this is what I have to keep doing. Yes, I'm really focused on the happy list. Yes, I can talk to that and I can see that in others, but making sure that I go, whoa, hang on a minute. Sense check in. Am I in my happy place right now, or am I coming away from my happy place? Because, it's not raining, roof's okay, but it's not raining. Could that go wrong? So there's that. But then this other piece as to why does it take the roof to be leaking? I think it's a willingness to change. And I think the consciousness comes first, but we have to realize we're not happy. But then there's a fear of changing. You said yourself, people in a job, they're in, if you read The Big Leap with Gay Hendricks, and he talks about, the zone of excellence is like these four quadrants. Most of us sit in this zone of excellence, particularly in work, where we are brilliant at what we do, recognize what we do, but then we're not happy. We don't like it. It pays the bills, and it's too darn scary to move from there and take the big leap to do something different. So I think because there's this, so I think it's consciousness and an unwillingness to change. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I think it's fear-based. And that's for me, because it's like redundancy. Redundancy can be the biggest catalyst, can't it, to change, good, positive change. But if we'd never been made redundant, we'd never be doing the thing that we're doing today. It takes real courage, I think, to go, I'm doing something different. I'm not doing that anymore.
And this is going to sound weird, because I completely agree with what you're saying. But strangely, I don't think we're wired to be happy. For some bizarre reason, I think we're wired to go through struggle and difficulties and challenge and things like that. Because if you go way back to when we just come out of the trees and started living in caves, we'd still be living in caves, and we might not have been the predominant species if we didn't have that sense of curiosity and didn't have that sense of kind of like pushing ourselves out on the edge. I mean, think about it. The first nomads to actually leave the safety and the comfort of their little cave block and moved out onto the savannah to discover new areas for whatever reason they had to leave. That was a massive thing. I mean, it's probably the equivalent of like going to the moon and setting up a base on the moon. Yeah. Leaving the comfort of the area, the animals you knew, the safe zones, the danger zones, and then moving into this completely new, bizarre, different trees, different landscape, different animals. We couldn't have done that if we were designed and built to be happy, because happy means being safe and comfortable. So we just stayed in the cave and, keep the fire nice and big, and we wouldn't have moved out of that. So I think we're just not built to be happy, and it takes something to kick us up the backside to go, actually, there's a different way of doing this.
Yeah. Yeah, you're probably right. And I think, like you say, what it's almost like, what's that definition of happiness as well? Because you can say, should we just be happy with what we have? And I think you're right. We are curious beings. We're constantly striving for something more. And I think society has changed, hasn't it? As we were saying right at the beginning before we came on, which is we're living in a world that is constantly connected but not connected. And like there's so much around us to compare, and therefore are we challenging our happiness more than we ever were challenging it in the past? I mean, it's such a massive topic. I mean, it's like fascinating, right? It's just what, and also what, how do you rate your happiness?
You know something, Lee? I don't even think people think about it. I think people might watch a film and, usual kind of thing. The protagonist has a hard time and then they resolve the hard time and then they're happy. I think right at the end, they think, you know what? They're really, really happy. And I'm not happy. And then they go on, oh, I've got to make a cup of tea. I don't think, well, I know for a fact we don't think, because we are reactors. We react to events rather than going, oh, that's just happened. What do I need to do? We kind of go, there's the event, and bang, we're instantly reacting to it. Like, for example, a good example of this is everybody thought that the 21st of this month was going to be the end of lockdown. Yeah, even though the government and various other people said, look, don't bet on it too much because things might change. I'm saying this way back.
Yeah.
Now they've said, sorry, folks, it's going to be another 4 weeks. People are like really up in arms and angry, and I booked this and I booked that and I booked the other. And again, they've reacted to the information rather than taking a step back and go, right, okay, maybe I should have not booked this and waited until it actually ended, kind of thing. So we react and we react and we react. And there's very, very few people, I think, that actually take a step back and think deeply about where they are, what they're doing, what they want to do, what they don't want to do, where they want to be. And so this thing about being happy, I think it's a fleeting notion that goes around people's minds unless they kind of read a book about it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that comes back to the piece around if, when we're so focused on, and I think this was me, I do think this was me, you're so focused on the destination that you forget, it's a bit cliche, but it's true, you forget to enjoy the journey. And I think, again, it's back to that curiosity and that consciousness. I mean, I honestly think curiosity and consciousness are two of the greatest tools that any leader can have in their toolkit. Because I think when we get curious, we do the thing that you're saying, which is we allow ourselves to step back and go, oh, I was saying that, to try and explain this, and I know that you'll understand this, but for some that perhaps this is a bit, I think sometimes it is just tuning into what your body's feeling, or the sensations that you're feeling in your body, because that physiology piece comes after the subconscious is kicked in, right? Like, and sometimes I might be sitting there and I think, oh, I feel I've got that sensation in my tummy, something doesn't feel right. Or on the converse side, I feel really light and energetic and all of the rest of it, and I know that is me in my joy zone. And some of my happiest moments are so simple. I think someone asked me, tell me about the last time you felt really truly happy. And I know that I'm outside. I know that they are moments of happiness. You can't be happy all of the time. I don't even think that's like your point. You can't, right? It's just life. You can't live life like that. But you can be as joyous as you possibly can and look for and reframe and just make sure that you're living out as much of the joy as is possible. And I do think it's the reframing, to your point. Okay, so I've got this situation. How can I reframe it? How can I flip it on its head? What can I learn from this? How can I make this situation work out differently for me? And I think I didn't do as much of that pre-cancer. I do think I was more of a glass half empty. I'm not as I'm the person I am today. I'm not sure that I've always been. Definitely.
You raised an interesting. Well, you said, what was it? My joy something. You said
in my joy zone.
That's it. I love that phrase,
Yeah.
my joy zone. But just going back before that, you were talking about people being in tune with their feelings. And do you not think that a lot of people actually don't want to feel because we eat too much chocolate cake, we binge out on Netflix, we drink loads of wine or beer or whatever, and other recreational types of activities that take away the ability to feel, because
Yeah, I do.
either we don't like a feeling or it's too difficult or uncomfortable or painful. So therefore what we do is we do stuff that takes that ability to feel away from us, almost like kind of cutting the
Yeah.
nerve so you don't feel the pain in your hand.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think we do, and I think all of us do that. And I think even if we're conscious of it, we do it. And I think for a very long time, I always used to call it compartmentalizing, and I still do it now. But for I can remember when I got my first really big promotion into what I saw as one of the scariest roles I ever worked in, and like every day something happened that scared me in the role, but I was so determined not to let the fear take over. What I did was I did work in this sort of car park, so I would literally take things, almost sort of put them away in a cupboard, I'll put that over there and I'll just deal with this one thing here today. And that, I do think that's a strategy that can work, because you can't deal with everything all at one time. But I think you're absolutely right. I think there's a lot of compartmentalizing that goes on with people's feelings, so they suppress it, whether that is ignoring it, whether or not it is suppressed through, like you say, other means. And I think, yeah, it's not because it's going to build, isn't it? I use the example, as I was saying to some guys that I was working with recently, use this example for lots of different things, but it's like carrying a bag that just gets heavier. You might put it in the bag, put it in the bag, put it in the bag, put it in, before you know it, you're carrying this bag, you don't realize you're carrying it, and then it just blows. It's just, that's when it's, I
Yeah, I mean,
imagine,
the
I'm no
Bible said it
expert.
best, didn't they? You know, the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah, yeah, of
All it
course.
takes is just that one little thing, and then
Hmm.
you just go, you explode, or you collapse, or you give
Yeah,
up, your legs cave in, and it can be something so inconsequential, but it doesn't matter, because you, like you say, using your analogy, you fill this bag to the brim, and like the handles are string, you can see the kind of like the stitching's coming undone, and then you get a feather and you drop the feather on there, and then the bag just goes, that's it, I've had it, and bang,
yeah.
it just
And you,
splits up
yeah,
completely.
and then you feel like you've overreacted, but you haven't over. It could be years you've been carrying it around, and it's burnout. Like burnout's the same thing, isn't it? It's anything. It's the compound effect of anything. But I think you're right. Back to your point around, people often don't want to feel it. And I was talking recently. I have two young boys, and really mindful of like their mental health. And I'm constantly, like, one of the things I do with we were chatting about my kids earlier before we started, but they like being outside too. But what's interesting is that they'll come in from school, the eldest one particularly, and he might be in his pre-teenage, not really wanting to talk, and I'll just, even if he doesn't want to go, let's just go for a walk in the woods. There's no pressure. We're just walking, we're not really looking at each other. I think that's another really important thing I noticed. We don't have to be looking at each other, but that is when some of our most important and influential conversations take place. That's when he opens up. That's when he shares how he's really truly feeling. And I think, for me, I've realized it's creating the right space to feel like you're safe enough to have those. So the bag then can be, it's almost like you can then tip the bag out, tip the
Mhm.
bloody bag out, empty the contents of the bag out, and then we can start again. It's not saying it's going to go away. You might start filling it back up again.
Yeah, I mean, that is one of the biggest mistakes I made with my kids, was that finding it really hard to find the right space for them to be able to talk freely. And I don't think I ever achieved it. But if you can do that, if you can find a way, it's so important. Because again, before we went live, we were talking about what it was like to be 12.
Mm.
And we had this conversation where we were saying, look, people say to you, if you could go back in time, when would you go back to? And I said, to Leigh, that from the age of between kind of like 11, 12 to 16, 17, I would never go back to, because it was I don't know what it's like to be a girl. So I've never been a girl, I've been a bloke, but it's just a horrible time. Hormones, and girls only like older boys, and there's the challenges going. I wasn't particularly academically bright at school, so I had a really tough time with that, and I was asthmatic, and it's just a really, really, really challenging time. And when I'm talking back in the mid 70s, I was born in 1960, so my teenage years from kind of like 1973 onwards. But so there was, no phones. Phones were in a house fixed to a wall, or you went down the road to the phone box. 3 channels on the TV, blah blah blah. Whereas today, access to information is just never ending. We're also talking about the fact that when I was at school, okay, if you had homework, you went home and you left school at the school gates. Whereas today, kids, most kids got mobile phones, so they go home from school, but they're still attached to school and the kids at school because they're all on one social media platform or another. So if your child's being bullied or having a hard time or whatever, they can't escape from it.
No,
And
they
that was one
can't.
of the lucky things for me, because I was bullied at school, was that once I'd left school, I escaped and I
Yeah.
was fine. So yeah, I would not want to be 12 or 13 now, because it's just so challenging. And I
It's
think what
so,
you're
so
doing to give
challenging.
your kids the space by taking them out into the woods to walk and talk is fabulous.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the easiest thing. Sometimes they don't want to go,
Of
but
course not.
I
Yeah.
see, I see it's really interesting. And I see my eldest, I mean, they're very outdoorsy kids anyway, but just recently I saw him and I could tell he was not in a brilliant place. He's fine, but he needed to go out for a walk and was resistant to that walk. But by the end of the walk, he's 12 years old. He was collecting caterpillars and, looking at the insects and just totally present in the moment. And I think you're right. That is, I'm so grateful that we have technology that we have. Like, you and I would not be having this conversation if we didn't have technology, if we didn't have social media. I wouldn't have my business probably if it wasn't for the technology. So I am incredibly grateful for the opportunities that it creates, but I'm also incredibly mindful of some of the challenges that it presents. And I agree with you that if I had my time again, would I want to grow up as a child in the society that we have with what they have at their fingertips? I'm not sure I would. It creates more opportunity for them, which is amazing. But I'll tell you a funny story. This tell me a little bit about insight to me. I have so I've got a mobile phone like everyone. I've got a very terrible habit of I say hiding, putting a mobile phone somewhere where I stop using it. So, and I do it with my son as well. So when he was one of the last people to have a mobile phone, and I'm very again aware you need some time away from that phone, and it's like if it's there, you'll just pick it up. So I would put it away somewhere, and then when he couldn't see it, he didn't even think about it. But then I forget where it is I've put it because it's not in the normal place. So I lost his phone. No. Was it his phone? I'm trying to think now. Yes, I lost his phone, which was my old phone. You're going to think, well, where's she going with this? But I promise you, it's quite entertaining.
Carry on, carry on.
So I lost his phone because I'd bought myself a new phone and given him my old phone. And it was my old phone that I lost, which I'd given to him. So then I had to get another replacement phone for him because I'd lost the phone. And then about 6 months later, I lost this phone, the one I have in my hands right now, and found the one that I'd lost previously, which was his. So I started using his phone as mine. The other day, I found this phone. So I have that one back now. So I now have a spare phone. Guess what I've now done? I've lost his phone again. It's all in the house. I literally put them places, but they go missing for months. The reason I'm sharing that is for two reasons. One was I took all social media off of my phone after I lost my phone, and the difference to my mindset, difference to my productivity, the difference to not like being way more present was really obvious to me because I'd taken the socials off of my phone. And where he hasn't had the phone, like he's 12 years old, this is quite a big deal. He hasn't really been bothered by it. He hasn't had the phone now for probably coming up for a week and a half, 2 weeks. And I would say his attitude has improved tenfold. And I said to him the other day, "You bothered?" He said, "Not really, no." Because I saw a direct correlation with time spent on his phone to how his attitude was every single time. So I'm not suggesting everyone needs to go and lose their phones and their children's phones. That's not what I'm suggesting. But I'm really noticing again because I'm quite observant, so I'm really conscious of seeing things. That's been really interesting. It wasn't an experiment that I set up intentionally,
No, of course it wasn't. Of course it wasn't.
but it's
Not
played
at
out.
all.
And interestingly, because social media was on this, because I removed the apps from the other phone, social media is back on here. I'm in the thick of doing some work right now, so I need them on there. But my usage on my phone has probably increased by about 75%. And I can feel my habits changing as well as a result of the socials being back on my phone.
if I'm not going for a walk where I have to do where I want to do a live, I will deliberately forget my phone
Yeah,
and go without it, because just having it on you is, you kind of like, you fiddle with it.
you
You're
do.
sitting there just having a break, and you take the phone out to check the time or whatever. So I just leave the thing at home now. If I'm going to do a live, then I'll take it out, do the live, and put it away again in the bag. And that's one thing I do. I will take a bag so I can put it in the bag and
Yeah,
not have the thing on me, because then if I don't have easy access to it, I don't use it, and it's not an issue. I mean, I've got the socials on there because I spend most of my time. That's how I find my clients, is by being on social. So I need it, but when I'm not using it, I will deliberately leave it in another room, and all kinds of strange things. I do some on-call work for a kind of like a mental health group, and I was asked to do nights, and I said no, and it's kind of like, well, why not? I said, well, because at 9 o'clock I switch my phone into airplane mode and I leave it.
hmm,
And when I go to bed, it doesn't come into the bedroom with me. It stays in the living room. So there's no way I could do the on call, because I'd need the phone. She went, yeah, you would need the phone. So, and that's the main reason why. It's not because I could use the extra money. That'd be great. But
yeah,
it's because of the way I've set my life up now, is the phone doesn't come to bed with me. It stays in the other room.
yeah.
And sounds so bizarre, but I know people, and I've read about it. The first thing they do when they wake up in the morning is they grab their phone and either checking their emails or checking their socials. And I'm thinking, that's not a really great way to start your day.
No, it's really
Definitely
not.
not.
'Cause you I had a lovely lady. I don't know if you're familiar with her. Dr. Claire Burley came in to talk to us recently about sort of behavior. She specializes in relationships, and one of the things that we were talking about is that inner critic that you get in your head. And she was talking about the power of imagery, which you guys operate in a similar space, so I'm sure you'll speak about the same. um you know a lot of it was common sense, which you think about the things you look at impact how you feel. But I was thinking, goodness, if positive imagery can have such an impact on the way you're feeling and thinking in that moment, what then happens, to your point, with everything that is, there's no filter, right? It's the news feed
Mm,
that you're scrolling through. And I know I've done it myself, and again, I'm much more conscious about it these days, but I see my clients as well, that when we are in that state of I'm feeling really rubbish, or there's all the noises that go on in your head, um then you start the thing you do is you start scrolling. You scroll, so all you're doing is feeding that feeling. And you're quite right, imagine if you're waking up first thing in the morning, and that's the first thing you do, and then the last thing at night, like, that's affecting your sleep. And I think it's just understanding that, isn't it? And I think people are becoming more conscious of it. And I also find, like, when I say to clients, just don't take your phone to bed, and they say, but it's an alarm clock. I'm like, well, get yourself an alarm clock. You don't need that as your, what did you do before a phone? You don't need that as your alarm clock. And it's one of the reasons why I don't actually like sort of meditation apps and stuff, because I don't
mm.
want to take my phone up to bed. I'm with you. I don't trust myself with it. I have to do something to remove it so that I don't look at it.
Well, the way I see it is, if you like chocolate cake, it's like taking a big chocolate cake to bed with you and leaving it on the side. You
Yeah,
know it's there, the
great
spoon's there,
analogy.
so you're going to go, I quite fancy some chocolate cake now. Are you going to eat it?
Yeah,
Whereas if there was no chocolate cake in the house, you go, you know what, I really fancy chocolate. So you have to get up, get dressed, and go
mm,
find a 24-hour shop, which you're not going to do because you're comfy in bed. But if it's there right next to you with the spoon, it's just so easy to reach across
yeah, of
and grab a mouthful. And it's
course
the
it
same
is.
with the phones. And yeah, my life, I'm not gonna say it's improved, but it's just, I'd start the day off by waking up and going, you know what, I'm great, come here for another day. And I don't watch the news. I allow myself 1 2 minute glance at the headlines 2 or 3 days a week, and that's it.
Yeah,
Because again, your point about imagery, it is so important. I mean, do you remember that poor kid, Jamie Bulger, the kid
yeah,
that was killed by two young kids? There
yeah,
was a lot of information put out about the fact that the two assailants spent a lot of time playing adult rated games
Gosh.
with lots of violent imagery and lots of negative connotations. So if you're in that zone, you're filling your brain up with negative images and negative pictures. And it's the same with the news. I mean, we all know somebody's been hurt, there's a war going on somewhere, politics is politics, and so on and so forth.
Mm,
It's never good stuff.
no,
It's never
you're
happy stuff. So if you're watching
no.
the news, if you get up and the first thing you do is check the news, and you're driving to work and you've got the news on the radio, you get to work and you've got one of these big TVs in the canteen or whatever, the news is on, you know,
Yeah.
and it just becomes this never-ending cycle of negativity. I'm on Facebook a lot, but what I've done is I think of the posh word is curated. Basically, anybody that posts negative stuff on my feed has gone.
Yeah.
If I need to follow them, if I need them as friends, I've
Hmm.
just unfollowed them. If I
Yeah.
don't need them as friends, I've just unfriended them. I don't need that stuff. My feed now is pretty much 99.999% positive stuff
Yeah.
because
Me
I've
too.
curated it that way to get rid of all the crap that I don't want to read about. I know I'm not being naive. I know bad stuff happens. I know the world in some parts is a real mess. I know stuff is going on, but I choose not to dwell on that. I choose to dwell on the positive stuff. People putting themselves out to help other people and all that kind of thing. I
Mm,
don't want to be, what's the word I'm thinking of, subsumed by negativity and this downward spiral, because I know it brings me down.
yeah.
Yeah, I've suffered
Definitely.
with depression for a long time, and I know that it's very, very easy to get sucked into that kind of whirlwind of negativity and start spiraling downwards.
Mm,
And I think so many people are kind of stuck in this. So they're in a job they don't like, they don't have any hobbies, nothing to look forward to, and then all day long they're talking about, did you hear on the news last night about X, Y, or Z? Oh God, did you hear about what Boris Johnson or this person's done, or that person's done, and you know, gossip, gossip, gossip. It's never good stuff.
it's not serving, is it? I think,
Ah,
yeah, you're right. And I think it again, it goes back to what we were saying earlier on about what's your happy place, what's your joy zone, where do you, I was saying, I think just yesterday or the day before, I was talking about like my medicine, what's my medicine that sort of makes my energy levels increase and gets me back into that joy zone. And mine is being outside. So if I know that my energy feels depleted, I need to go outside. What I know that isn't going to serve it is scrolling through, as you've just described, or watching the news, or all you're doing is feeding that part. And actually, when we're honest with ourselves, it's really, for me, it's about sitting back and thinking, okay, when am I at my happiest? How do I create more of those moments? And not the happiest times, like you say, where you're suppressing it, where it requires something you need to add in, whether that's alcohol or, whatever those things might be. But just truly, when you strip everything back, when am I at my happiest? So, for me, I can remember a time it was pouring with rain, and I was just out with my two boys and my husband, and they were running around playing it. And I can remember looking at the view, it was pouring down, and I just thought, I feel like I can feel it in my gut, real joy right now. And there is nothing that I need more than this, really. And it sounds a bit silly, um, but I think it's knowing that they're the things that are important to you and they're what matter most. And how do you recreate as many of those moments as possible?
I don't think it sounds silly at all. I think a lot of people equate happiness with financial gain, success, or whatever, but it's not.
Mm,
Happiness is often the most ridiculous things, like you just mentioned. Watching your kids run around getting wet in the rain. I mean, one of my funny things is when my kids were really young and it had just been raining, we'd go for a walk, puddle jumping.
yeah,
Yeah, my ex-wife used to go ballistic. Oh, you need ruin. I would just join them.
yeah.
We'd
It's your inner
see a
child.
great big puddle, and they'd go in and they'd stamp around it, they'd jump up and down, and they'd be giggling and they'd be
Mm,
laughing, and I did the same thing. I mean,
yeah,
you could see other grown-ups going, "Oh, he's acting like a bit of an idiot." But I don't care because it was fun and it was.
yeah,
I'm not going to use the word joy, but it made me feel happy. And
yeah.
you mentioned this before. We can't be happy all the time. We're not built that way. But what we can look to do is try and be happy most of the time. And happy can be, sitting reading a good book, being in your garden with a cup of tea in the morning, listening to the birds, watching your kids play around. Going for a walk on the beach, it doesn't have to involve financial expenditure. And often the happiest times is when it's just really, really, really simple
Simple.
stuff. You know, a babies are brilliant. I mean, yeah, okay, they stuff comes out at both ends and they're messy and everything, but there are times when the baby is just a bundle. I mean, that phrase, a bundle of joy.
Joy. Yeah.
They're there, they're looking around, they're giggling, they're smiling. There's no reason, why the hell is he giggling? Why is he laughing? But it doesn't matter. And when the baby's giggling and laughing, you do that as well.
Do you know what? Just hearing you say that, actually, every moment I think you and I both described, recently at some point during this call, that the correlation I keep seeing is happiness is when we're present. We're present in a moment. Like, I feel happy now. I feel happy having this. I feel happier and richer for having conversations like this. This does play to my heart. I don't want to be having conversation like gossipy conversations. That doesn't make me feel
Mm,
good. That doesn't make me feel happy. I don't like particularly talking about other people in an unkind way. I'm not perfect, but I know that that doesn't bring me joy. So I think, but it is being in the moment. And I realize that, whether you're you're letting your inner child come out and you're jumping up and down in puddles, or I was watching my dog last night. We think we've got some sort of mouse keeps coming. Well, we know there's a little mouse that lives, a little field mouse lives in our garden. She keeps getting the scent of it. She's a cocker spaniel. I love watching her at work. But I tell you what, she was driving my husband mad. And he's like, gosh, we've got to sort this out. She's going nuts. I was like, why have we got to sort it out? Look at her. Like, she is at her happiest. She's got the scent of something, the tail's wagging, she's running around the garden, she's fully present. Nothing's going to distract her. She's in the moment. And I think they're actually a lot. If we were to, I'm sure if we had 50 people here right now and we asked them to describe a recent moment where they felt happy, 99% sure they were in the moment, fully
mm.
present. We're not happy when we're juggling 50 million different things. Um, so yeah, I think again it comes back to that consciousness, doesn't it, of knowing where is our joy zone, because it will be different. Fulfillment, I think, is another part, isn't it? It's being fulfilled,
Yeah, or
richer.
doing something that you enjoy doing. Ex-brother-in-law just loves DIY. He would knock down a wall just to rebuild it again, you
Mm,
know, and that's his passion. I absolutely hate DIY. And I had this conversation with him about, why he was so much into it. He said it was because his dad taught him. I think his dad might have been a carpenter or a brickie or something. I can't remember now, but his dad taught him all this stuff. So he spent a lot of time with his dad doing, and that's how they communicated. They didn't talk lots, but they'd
mhm.
build walls together or they'd fix things together. And that's what connected him to his dad. And from
Yeah.
that, he kind of absorbed all this knowledge, and just that was his joy zone, fixing things. And me, it just drive me balmy. He just absolutely loved that. And again, it just reminded me what you just said there. It was because he was in the moment. He wasn't thinking about what he had to do at work. He wasn't thinking about what the next job was. He was thinking about what I've got to do is I've got to nail this thing here and I've got to saw that here, and right in the moment.
Mm,
And when you're in that moment, everything else just kind of melts away. There's just you, and this is a bit of a cliche, but there's you and the hammer, or there's you and the pencil, or there's you and your dog, or there's you and your kids in the woods. And it's that instant of time, like you were saying. And that's when because you, how can I say that? When you're in that moment, you might not recognize it. It's after,
yeah.
because you're
Yeah.
too busy enjoying it to think, oh,
Yeah.
I'm having a joy zone moment right now. No.
Exactly. No, because you don't want that to be the case, because that's a distraction, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it comes, I'm a strengths coach. And when I talk about strengths, people assume I'm talking about competencies, but I'm not. I strengths is one thing. It's not what, like, the sole thing of what I do, but for me, it is about where the energy is drawn from. So I always say strengths really are like what makes you happy, what most makes you happy. So if you're looking at strengths in your work, a sensible employer would get to the root, whether you're running your own business or whether you're employed, find out which are the parts of your job or your business that you absolutely love. If I'm working with someone who's super creative and they're so ingrained in running their business, they're not doing enough in their creative space, then what we'll find is they're not happy, because actually their happiness and their joy and their highest energy comes from being in their creative space. But what they're doing is spending so much time running their business, or they're not doing that thing. So they just think, well, why would I carry on? I might as well go back to employment. And it's the same thing with employment. You're not getting your best performance out of people because you're not focusing them in. Because what ends up happening is the least energized we are about something. You talk about, the hammer situation. Like he's probably performing at his absolute best because he's totally in flow. He's totally enjoying it. He's really high energy. Whereas if made you do it, yes, you could probably do it, but it would take you longer. Your energy would be lower. You wouldn't be as productive and you wouldn't perform as well. So I always say, like, the more we can understand about ourselves, the more we can leverage our strengths. I'm a Spurs fan, and I always use Harry Kane. Like, Harry Kane is a great striker. I'm sure he could go play in goal, but we're not going to put him in goal and say, well, we've got to make you good at all these different positions on the field. We're going to say, you love kicking the ball and getting it in the net and being a striker. So let's focus in and leverage that strength of yours, because that's where your passion is. And I just think, well, the more we can do that, the more we can understand, but it links to happiness. It's just, I'm just ridiculously passionate about it. The more we can do that makes us happy in our work and in our life, that's what life's all about, really.
The saddest thing about what you just said there, Leigh, is that most employers and employees don't recognize that. The job is A to Z, and you'll do A through Z or Z through to A, not B, C, D, and E, because that's what you're best at and that's what you enjoy. No, you've got to do the whole thing. I think that there's very few jobs now where people might say, yeah, I'm a designer. I love the creative aspect of design, but yeah, okay, you still got to do this, put everything in a box and make it red and green, and you get 5 minutes to do your designy bit that you really enjoy.
Yeah.
And I think that's where so many people are unhappy in their work, because when they first joined, they really enjoyed doing this bit, but that bit got smaller and smaller and smaller, and they had to do all the other stuff which they didn't enjoy, and eventually this thing they really enjoyed just completely vanished.
Yeah,
because they weren't able to do it anymore for whatever reason.
No, and I've seen it. So my background's HR, and I've always worked with leaders, and I think one of the things that was obvious, I was very fortunate to work for really great companies that really took their people with them on, like, the journey. And what I think they did really well, and we all did incredibly well, was identifying these things, because then you can create roles that play to that, even if it means, to your earlier point you were saying about, look, you might be stuck in a job, there's no way that you can get out of it. And we understand that, look, if we all lived in an ideal world, maybe we wouldn't all be doing the things that we're doing, but you can create a life around it that brings some joy. And I would say the same thing can happen in work. So you might be in that role and might not be able to completely take you out of that role. There's nothing else that you can do. But what you can then start to do is you can start looking at, okay, so this element over here that I'm incredibly passionate about and I need to leverage, and I need to move them to do more of that kind of stuff. Sorry about this.
It's all right, no problem.
Please.
I've just realised we have been talking for more than an hour, so. Ooh.
So sorry about that. He's like peering.
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine.
I'm like trying to have the conversation, but my point that I was trying to talk about was, you can then identify within that role there's something that maybe they're passionate about it, but they don't have the skill set. So what you might do is you might create a project that you could draw them in and enable them, so they get joy from that, which almost like compensates for the bit that they're not getting over here, which comes back to what you were talking about. So I think you're absolutely right. More employers would get better performance out of their people if they did it. And equally, imagine if you've got more of those people within a team, all leveraging strengths, all operating in flow, all in their hammer zone, as it were. That is going to create so much more output, and a much nicer environment.
I'm guessing that was probably the kind of like your Apples and Microsofts and other organizations in the very, very early days when
Mm,
they built these amazing spaces for people to work in, and they had all the kind of stuff that people would enjoy doing. I'm not sure what it's like now, but
yeah.
yeah, because those big companies, the big money to spend on things like that, probably did do that. Whereas other organizations either don't see the necessity or don't have the vision to actually to push that forward. But anyway, I've just realized we've been going on for more than an hour now, and you're a strength coach. What is that? How does that work? What do you do? Who do you
Well,
work with?
I'm not a strengths coach per se.
What
I'm
are you then?
trained, yeah, I'm trained, I'm very passionate about strength. So I can assess people's strengths. So I'm accredited with Strength Scope. So it's a tool, I guess, in my armory, if that's the right way to describe it. I'm an executive coach. I specialize in leadership. I'm incredibly passionate about leadership. I work with two types of clients really in terms of my speciality. Really who I work with are leaders of businesses at all stages of their journey, but I seem to sort of operate in sort of two main camps. One is ensuring that business owners have got their foundations in place. I really believe that if you've got some clear foundations and some clarity about many of the things that we've talked about, what it enables you to do is to build on that and build a business that is aligned to what is most important to you, but also really has your sort of conscious leadership at its heart. So you can then start to build and do more of what you want to do and make a difference to other people. And then at the other end of that sort of extreme will be the established leaders of businesses. They're normally owner, founder, business leaders, but probably sitting a bit at the top of the tree. They don't need all the help with the strategy and the foundations. They need a sounding board. Back to the bag situation, I can always remember a highly successful leader saying to me, it's lonely at the top of the tree. And you might have a massive business, a massive team around you, but often what you're doing is just you're carrying everyone and everything, and sometimes you just need someone to help you tip out the bag or lift the lid on the what I call the steam pot, which I'm sure you relate to, because that's a lot of what you do within your work. Sometimes it's just about holding the space,
Mm.
and letting them figure out the next move themselves, and you're just facilitating that through coaching. So I would say that my sort of pure coaching hat goes on more in that space, and then I sit more in sort of a hybrid of coaching, mentoring, consultancy, and a bit of education sort of over this side, really, depending on what stage that leader's on in their journey. So yeah, that's me. And then strength just is something I just think we need to be as happy as possible.
Yeah, part of your toolkit, we were saying.
Yeah, I do, because I do believe curiosity and consciousness is a major part of our growth if we're going to do it happily.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So what's going on at the moment? Have you got any new things going on? Have you got what does life look like for you
Well,
business
lots
wise?
of things. I've written a book which was going to be we were going to publish it next month, but I've put it back until that's going to be November. That's going to be published. Really just giving myself ample space for editing. I realize the editing process is quite time consuming, so I've given myself a bit of extra space to be able to do that. So that's exciting, because I hadn't fully appreciated how challenging it can be to write a book. So I'm excited that I've done that. I have co-authored a book before, but it was nothing to write in your own book, that's for sure. So that's new. We've got really excited about my Get Set for Success program, which isn't new. We're in our 4th cohort. We'll be opening the doors for that in a couple of weeks. So that's foundation. That's based on my 5P framework, which is really sort of, I talk about purpose, product, positioning, profit, and plan. So we kind of work through that, and then leadership sort of at the heart of that. And then also, like, I'll be opening the doors to my how many years have I been doing it now? I think I've done it 6 times. So I run a mastermind, and my 12-month mastermind comes to an end in September, and we'll be reopening the doors in October. So there's lots and lots and lots going on. I love running mastermind. It's my favorite way to work. Definitely me in my happy zone when I'm facilitating and leading them.
So with your mastermind, do you have people at kind of both ends of the scale, to use the euphemism you used earlier on, or is it mainly people at the top end?
I think it's really in the middle, if I'm honest.
Oh, okay.
So what I find is my Get Set for Success program is really helpful for those either sort of not starting out, because most of the time people that are coming on the Get Set for Success have established businesses, but something's not quite right, part of the jigsaw's not quite right. And the mastermind for me means they've gone through the foundational piece and they're in that build phase. So they're really starting to hire in a team, they're starting to think differently, they're starting to look at their business model, and there might be some tweaking that needs to be done within that foundations. More often, I'm not saying never say never, but I would say further along the journey, these guys aren't necessarily looking for a mastermind. I won't say never because I've started to have some conversations. They generally want to work one-to-one, I would say. But it may come up in the future, who knows?
Always be open, absolutely. Where can people reach out to you, Leigh, if you want to know more?
I am all over social. I've got a website, leighhowes.com. You can go check me out there. But I've got the Business Leaders Club, which is a free Facebook group that people can come and jump in. I'm over on LinkedIn, Leigh Howes, and I'm also on Instagram. So if you Google me, my kids tell me, and I come up straight away on Google. I should probably check it out myself, but my kids think I'm famous, which is mad. If you run a business, I think we're all famous these days. So yeah, you'll find me, and it would be lovely to connect.
Right, don't worry about if you didn't make those notes down. I will put them in the show notes. What was I going to say? Listen, Leigh, it's been brilliant. We've gone from, well, horse riding to happiness to business to mastermind. It's been a great conversation. Before we close, any kind of last words, any final thoughts?
No, I just urge. You asked me at the start. You said, what brings you here, and I think the very fact that we have talked about happiness, I think, is testament to what you've created with this podcast. And I would just urge anyone that's listening to this to just really get more conscious about what makes them happy. And if they can live a life where they are doing more of what makes them happy, whether that be that they need to make some changes in their work or their life, then I just am a huge advocate of being courageous enough to the small tweaks can make the world of difference. I really believe that.
Listen, Leigh, it's been fabulous. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Listen, guys, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And I'll see you on the next episode of the Happy Head podcast. Bye now.